Hey everyone, happy Thursday to you. Is it time IT workers unionize? Well, look, we just had an election. There are changes afoot. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Happy Thursday, everyone. It's Alan Schimmel here for Techstrong. Hey, we hope you're catching up on your sleep. I know a lot of us have been up late watching those returns and mail-in ballots and challenges and shenanigans and everything else. But hey, the wheels of justice grind ever so slowly. And democracy, you know what they say about democracy? It's the best of the worst. So until we come up with a better system, that's what we've got. But let's not dwell on voting, though I hope you caught our live a vote special yesterday on the gang. If not, you can see the recorded version up on Techstrong TV. It was a lot of fun doing that live and just to really kind of focus in on voting and the vote here in America. But today we've got some great topics, including, as I said in the opening, is it time for IT workers to don the union label? Let me introduce our gang for today, and we'll dive right into that and more. First of all, he's back joining us from high up in the Colorado mountains. He's a CTO and Futurum VP Research, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, it's good to have you back on.
Always good to be here. Glad that election's behind us, more or less. But yes, glad to be here.
I don't know if it's quite behind us, but okay.
I'm being optimistic.
Well, the voting part of it, I think,
is
voting, over.
Yes, thank you, the voting.
Joining Mitchell and I also from Futurum, where he's also an analyst, as well as one of the co-founders and CTO of Visible Impact, Guy Currier. Hey, Guy, how are you, man?
Good, and also glad to be through that fissure.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. Fishing. Yep. Joining us from Texas, the lady in red. She hasn't been on in a while. We're glad to have her back. She's one of our core original gang members, Amanda Razzani.
I'm so happy to be back.
Razzani, you've been gone so long, I forgot how to pronounce your name. Amanda Razzani. Hey, Amanda, it's good to have you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okie dokie. And then joining us, he's in purple. Well, he's not a purple state, but he's in purple. Our Chief Content Officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
This is the new color of the country, man.
Okay. You know, I guess we were voting with our wardrobe, and all right, I'll go with it. Let's jump right into things, though, guys. I appreciate you all coming on. The country is still in a bit of a turmoil, if you will, but there's some issues and some stories for us to cover. The first one is, do IT organizations need to unionize? I don't know if that's the right phrasing. It's, to me, is, do IT workers need to unionize? The Times had an article on this, and the Take No Opinion Washington Post, because Jeff Bezos has government contracts at stake, has an opinion on this. But we also have an opinion on it too, I bet. Mike, what do you think?
Well, the issue is that the Tech Workers Guild at the New York Times is on strike, or was on strike at the point of this recording anyway. But the issue seems to be, do IT workers need to have some sort of union, and what might that look like if they do have one? Because it might not be the classic kind of, Sally Field union kind of thing from the 60s and 70s. It's going to be more of maybe it's a guild or some sort of workers association where they just kind of pull resources and skills and maybe create a pension plan or something of that ilk. But Alan, I know we've kicked around this subject over the years. What's your take on, is there some thing for IT workers to organize around, and what might it look?
Yeah, I've got some definite opinions on this, but let me be really clear out the front. a rose by any other name would still smell as sweet. So I don't care whether you call it a guild, an organization, a brotherhood or sisterhood or whatever. It's a union, right? And unions, yes, at some point, especially Mike and people in your my age, that pendulum swung really far with unions and it really hurt productivity and maybe it went too far. But into 2024, 2025 America, unions are not necessarily a bad thing. And I think especially in the IT space, it's been a long time coming, right? You know, you mentioned the word that it starts with a P. What's it called? A pension? I thought that was something.
What's that?
Yeah, my grandpa talked about pensions. Because aren't we all going to be living high on the hog, collecting Social Security? Right? Haven't we all been putting money aside voluntarily into our 401ks? It would, what's going to happen when the boomers have already kind of moved through into this pension era, but the Gen Xers are not far behind, right? And the population kind of map inverts, and who's funding Social? And we're living longer. Who's funding Social Security? What happens when people who haven't been putting money away in their 401k are living on the street or making it harder for the next sandwich generation, right? What about, you get some crazy dude who spends untold billions of dollars buying some tech company, comes in and slash and burns and fires everyone in spite of their contracts and everything else. It's happened. We know it has, right? What happens to those people? Don't they have any rights? Right? I think it's high time IT workers join their brethren in the labor force and get some protection and get some advantages of collective bargaining.
Alan, this has come up multiple times. I think even when I started my career, there was discussions about should
Sally Fields was around there. Mitch, forget.
She was, yeah, on TV and everything, right? Uh-huh. And it kind of comes and goes. And I always ask myself, so what would be the tipping point to cause? Why now? Why would we do this? And I kind of sense that one of the underlying things is AI and all the discussions about replacing developers and technical people and all that kind of stuff. Because you can imagine folks that are worried about that, seeing what happens with the Actors Guild or whatever it was that said, you can't use my image, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's those jobs, if they quote unquote become threatened and, people losing it, that could cause that. Now you can argue, well, is AI going to replace it anyway? And that's not going to make a difference in the end. I don't think it's going to happen that, in a flash cut like that. But that seems to me to be one of the big drivers for this. This could be the time that it happens.
Well, as if on cue, the CEO of Perplexity, Aravind Srinivas, tweeted to AJ Sulzberger, the head of the New York Times, hey, while you're waiting for these tech workers of yours to knuckle under, I offered to you Perplexity.ai to take their place. It seems a little premature. An offer? I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, go ahead, Mike. You can explain it for us.
The irony of that is that the New York Times sent him a cease and desist letter last month for using their content. So there was kind of a I'm thinking there's a little tongue in cheek in there somewhere.
I thought the New York Times just did that with OpenAI and like everybody. I didn't realize they'd extended their generosity of lawsuits to Perplexity as well. Is this a philosophical question or a practical question? We're treating it a little philosophically, and I think that's important to know where our moral grounding is. But I think it's also, I think it's more a practical question because this day is coming, like Mitch says. It is coming. And I don't think we can really prepare for it, to be honest. I don't think anybody can. I think that a lot of the talk of AI replacing people is overblown. But eventually it won't be. I should admit, frankly, I just don't know when that is. I don't know if we know when that is. So I don't think the question is, should tech workers be allowed to organize? I think they will when they feel valuable enough and not compensated enough for that value to organize, because they wield power just like they did on the eve of an election when the New York Times has its famous electionometer thingy, and they're the ones who support it and everything. That's the moment when they said, no, enough is enough. And that's a wielding of power by labor, by workers. And it leads to unionization. And if governments, whether ours or those around the world, look dimly on that and try to prevent them with law or whatever, at the end of the day, the work has to get done by workers. It still can't get done by AI.
But I think we are in this huge technological revolution right now, and there is this fear of the unknown. So, we are seeing like the longshoremen strike recently, but that kind of went against them a little bit, because they did just keep automating and doing work as usual without them, we saw. So there's kind of this fine line to be treaded.
Yeah, I think Amanda has it right in the sense that it could accelerate the shift to AI, because businesses will be like, we can't be dependent upon people who will go out on strike. And yet the economy is more dependent upon those IT people than ever. I mean, we can't even go to the store and order something if the cash register is broken, because nobody knows how to use a pen and paper anymore.
Let me tell you guys a story. My oldest son was accepted to the Kelley Business School at Indiana University, and I went up with, this was 6-7 years ago, I went up with him on accepted student day. It started Friday night. There was an economics professor there talking about minimum wage, and him and I got into a fight. Well, not a fight, but a disagreement philosophically. And I told my son, if he went to that school, it wouldn't be on my dime. Let me tell you about the philosophical disagreement. The professor said minimum wage is a bad thing because it forces employers to replace their workers if technology can do it better and cheaper. I raised my hand. I said, are we in Indiana? He said, yeah. I said, are you some kind of communist?
That always makes the conversation go well.
Yeah, that was a good
Especially in Indiana.
I said, let me tell you something. It's called the market. And if I'm an entrepreneur and I could get a job done cheaper, better, faster by using a machine or technology instead of a person, you're telling me I should pay that person just to keep a job there? That's not America. And it's the same thing here. If AI is going to replace that tech worker, if an intelligent crane or loader-unloader is going to replace that longshoreman, they should, because that's the market. You don't preserve jobs for the sake of preserving jobs. That I'm against. You want to be in a union, you want to do, have rules and regulations, and you can't discriminate. That's one thing. You want to have a pension plan, that's great. But if you are not the best way to do the job, then you shouldn't do the job.
But here's the thing. What we experienced with Gen AI, the splash of Gen AI with ChatGPT 3 or 3.5, I lost track by now, a couple years ago, right? What we experienced was not boring jobs being taken over by robots so we can do more interesting jobs. What it looked like was interesting creative jobs like drawing and writing stories and all of those things. We can say all day long that it's simulation, not real, but people looked at, that looks alarming. And I'm not saying the tech jobs, boring jobs, not at all, but yeah, that's that's the issue. What does it look like in 10, 15
well,
years?
No, let me tell you what it looks like right now.
So,
we have our virtual event that we do every January called Predict. And Guy, I invite you to present this year at Predict. What do you think the big stories for 2025 are in your world? Mitchell can tell you more about it. But every year, we come up with a new theme. The theme this year for Predict is the beat goes on, kind of like a Sonny and Cher. The beat goes on, because the beat is going on. My team was saying, well, we need an abstract. Well, we need like a theme. We need the color scheme. And I got tired of hearing them go back and forth. I went into ChatGPT. I said, I'm doing a virtual event called Predict. And the theme is the beat goes on, sort of like Sonny and Cher. Make me up a hero image for the website. What a friggin' image it came up with. I sent it to my graphics person. She wrote back and said, where'd you get this? I said, I did it in AI. She said, this is great. We'll use it. And she doctored up a little bit to make it fit our WordPress and all that. And I thought to myself, am I ever going to ask her to do an image for my virtual events anymore? Why wouldn't I just do this all the time? It captured the essence of the 60s, the colors, the look, perfectly. What is the union?
It's all about
gonna
prompting
strike?
the image.
Excuse me?
Because I've had some issues trying to get the right images generated. It has some issues with numbers and some weird things, sometimes hands and different things like that.
Today it does, but they'll fix it.
Look at better.
And so then fine, use the person for that. But my point is if it can do it as good or better than the person can, faster, cheaper, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I owe it to my shareholders, I owe it to my investors, I owe it to my employees, really, to be as efficient as possible, right? I'm not crapping on the need to unionize. I'm just saying, to what we're talking about here, that's kind of my feeling on it.
I think we go through this again and again. What to your point, Guy, about ChatGPT, Gen AI is it crosses the Turing test threshold. It looks like, oh wow, this is a human, right? Or could do
sentient or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, and we know it's not that yet, or maybe it will be, but we've gone through this generations. We used to have drafting tables where we drew the architectural diagrams out on a piece of paper with, slide rules and pencils and all that kind of stuff, and we do that digitally today. We're doing the same thing with code today. If you really talk to people who are developing software, they're generating code with Copilot, and they're examining it, they're using it, or they're using it as a starting place, kind of like you did with your image, right? You're like, hey, that's 2/3 of it, and kind of what I want, but let me finish the rest of it the way I want it done. That'll start to get better and better. So you think about how that might change your work. We still need people to design things, and software is more complex than what Gen AI can truly do for a complex system today. That's going to change, right? And imagine, our jobs will change. Some jobs will go away, other jobs will get created. It's just, I think it's a natural order of things. And to your point, Alan, if unionizing is to put a freeze in time, hold time that this is the way we want to work and the job that we have, that is, antithetical, or whatever the word is, to how we operate, right? Toward the productivity economy that U.S. is so highly measured on, does very well. If it's to say, we have to do we want some collective bargaining. We need some more power in terms of, what our role in this is over time. Not to stop it, but we would like to have a say in that. And maybe it's a pension too, and things like that. That can be healthy. If it's not, let's get in the alleys with the sticks and go fight each other. It's let's work out something that's going to work for everybody. And that's going to change over time. So, we've gone from unions bad to unions can help us and help people work out issues they would never be able to do themselves. But they are not time machines to freeze time.
Let me give you another example using real union stuff. We all talk about, let's bring manufacturing back to the USA. We're going to put tariffs on everything outside of the USA. And manufacturing, and we're going to build factories here in the USA. This was the problem with unions, Mitchell, to your point, in like the 60s and 70s. You look at the automobile factory, the assembly line, hundreds of workers on an assembly line, turning this screw, turning this screw, turning this screw. We could have a robot do that. Oh no, it'll break the union. It'll cost us union jobs. Well, the rest of the world didn't play by those rules. Toyota built factories that had a robot turning that lug nut, and they made better cars, cheaper and faster. Right? It took us a little while to get it through our skulls and do that here in the U.S. But when you look at the car factories, the newer factories today, and not just cars, but a lot of manufacturing factories today, there's a fraction of the amount of work, and they may still be union workers, but there's a fraction of the amount of workers that used to be in those factories because a lot more of that work is automated. Why? Because it can be, and it should be. And so now the union worker is making sure the robot does the job right instead of doing the job himself or herself. And that, I think, is the way of things. But there's, what are the issues that unions can help workers with?
I think there's two issues that come out of that thinking, though, that we haven't worked through as a society. The first is there's a lot of those people in that small town who didn't get another job or didn't get trained to do something else, and we've seen them vote in ways that they're clearly angry about. And then the second thing is the barrier for entry in the age of AI into any business segment is going to be a lot lower. So all those entrepreneurs out there are going to find that they're going to have 10 times as many competitors because people are going to start up companies to compete with them because the cost of the
I'm
tech.
playing that small violin for all those entrepreneurs, Mike. That's the way of the market. What are we running here?
Yep.
What are we, Leninists?
No, I'm just saying.
I'm a John Lennonist, but yeah.
John Lennon.
Well, but in a sense, Alan, your argument is that given that we are capitalistic or we're capitalists, we should support unions. And I would agree with that. I think there are longer cycles. We went through it, like you were saying, the late 60s and 70s, where the existence of a market actor like unions corrupted the system in a certain way.
Yep.
And then it took competition from other systems like the Japanese system to break that system, again, in a capitalistic manner.
The market
and
rules.
The concentrate. So the power that the employers have is a money power, and the power that the workers have is a labor power. Well, now I'm starting to sound like Marx, but I'm not a communist. I'm just saying that that's kind of how it works. And we may be entering a new cycle right now. That's premature to really predict. But we certainly have seen, I grew up in an era of anti-union, general anti-union sentiment, that unions slowed everything down and made things harder. And now we seem to be in the reverse, and more expensive and less competitive. And now we seem to be in the reverse.
I mean, there's a balance there, and that's the point, right? That pendulum swings back and forth, but it's the market at work. And and one would say to have a healthy market, you need that counterbalance on both sides of that and finding the equilibrium. Now, put technology on top of it, and it puts its thumb on the scale, and it'll take a little time for that equilibrium to balance out, but it will. It will. And as I said, there are plenty of areas where unions can help IT workers, right? I know a lot of security folks who get called in on weekends because crap happens, right? And maybe they didn't sign up for that. I know we're seeing a lot of people who signed up because they could work from home and now being told, hey, if you don't come in the office, you're out. There are, there's a lot of areas where a collective bargaining agreement, I'll give you another one, the discrepancy, and this is real, the discrepancy between a female technology information worker and a male technology information worker. That shouldn't be, and that's something a union can help with as well.
Now, keep in mind, the point in the distance may be What happens when AI is sentient and it unionizes? There you go.
Yeah, well, that's when you got to unplug the machine.
Thanks for bending my mind there, Mitch.
I think they've done movies about that stuff, Mitch.
There are.
And then one of the AI becomes the entrepreneur. Actually, 1,000 of them becomes the entrepreneur.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal. Anyway, hey, this is a great conversation, but we need to take a break. Let's come back and talk about super micro shenanigans. Mike, you're going to tell us about that. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks, and as Alan promised, we're talking about Supermicro, and there's some strangeness in the system here because apparently EY resigned as their accounting firm and said cannot verify what is happening on Supermicro's financials, and now there's reports that as a result, NVIDIA is rerouting some GPUs to other suppliers, and that's when it starts to impact IT organizations. But it's hard to say exactly what's going on here with Supermicro. But Guy, maybe you've looked around at this a few times. Is this kind of enough troubling noise to say, maybe I need to take a step back from Supermicro and wait and see how it all turns out?
Oh, I don't know. I would say that when your auditor or, accounting firm quits, that's probably a bad sign for what your books look like. I think that, companies will come and go, like a little reminiscent to the last segment. Companies can come and go. Supermicro can come and go. Supermicro has an outsized influence, in my opinion. It established this sort of white box model, white box to mainstream, let's say, model, especially as cloud providers started to build out and before they started to make their own. But even now, a lot of times they're utilizing, whether it's Supermicro, Gigabyte, Asus, or whoever, they're utilizing these other firms for design or for assembly or that sort of thing. So Supermicro has that kind of influence in the industry. It's a bit of a bellwether, and I think the significance of it there is twofold. In the first place, if they experience a significant disruption in their business, I mean, they've already seen their stock price fall. This doesn't look good. They have plenty of business outside of what the AI servers that they're supplying. So they have plenty of lines of business, but it's a significant blow to their reputation. And as such, their plans and schemes to become, let's say, the first or the second tier providers opens up opportunities for other providers like a Dell or even a Lenovo to move a little bit down market, where they used to have a whole lot of business and lost it to the likes of Gigabyte and Supermicro. So that's one implication. The other implication has to do with, I think, that overall business model, because it's not just Supermicro that suffers the blow. It's the business, this sort of just-in-time, quick manufacturer, fragile infrastructure. This fragile infrastructure model is something that Cloud Native was built on, right? The idea that there's no one particular point in the system or the infrastructure that you should rely on. But if that doesn't work as a business model, then are we returning in some, or is there sort of a backdraft here that's pulling the enterprise or even the cloud providers back towards more reliable systems, because those are ones that they can rely on and count on from a trust and a brand and a support standpoint, if you follow me. In other words, if you're driving towards a price point, does that mean that, like Supermicro, you have to do some funny business in order to show yourself as solvent and capable? Is it a viable business model to be I don't want to call them, let's call them the economy version of infrastructure. Is that a viable business model? Or are there just too many controls and compliances and the supply requirements and everything that you have to meet, that you can't really do it.
Well, it's a stability. The stock market hates uncertainty, right? Well, supply chains hate unreliable delivery of product. And I think the concern around Supermicro was EY was hired in, I think, March to come in and kind of shore it up. And they reportedly said, you're not following the COSO principles or a framework around internal controls and risk management and all those kinds of things. And stepped away and said, we can't do this for you because you have too much risk or too much chaos or whatever is going on there. So I think people like NVIDIA step back and say, look, I don't know if I can count on you as a supplier. I'm going to pull back what we're doing with you, work with someone else and shift my business there. And of course, that doesn't help them from a financial standpoint, but it's arguable, maybe it's their own actions that got them there in the first place. And unless they seriously dig themselves out and transform, really change the company, that's going to continue to happen. So that's my concern are the things that are causing the instability and reliability around the company inherent and ingrained into the leadership and the management and the culture, and turning that around is no small thing.
I don't have particular insight, but my general experience with these scenarios going back a few decades is that when the auditor quits, it's a management problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because auditors don't come in and say it's our way or the highway. They really don't. They're being paid by the UI or Ernst & Young, I should say, were being paid by Supermicro to do this. And initially they start with, ooh, this doesn't look right. This doesn't look good. Should you be doing this? Should you be doing that? And generally speaking, management responds. I mean, it's their reputation, their business bottom line that's on the line. And so when Ernst & Young quitting, to me, shows a fundamental issue in management, and that's really where that's why it's such a bad sign, not just for the company, but for the sort of business model.
They also quit when they find that the customer's hiding things from them. It's not. It is like an intentional things going. I don't know that that's happening here.
Yeah, neither of us have that
they're out
insight.
the door
Yeah.
like we can't do this.
Alan, in my experience, can a management team kind of withstand this level of noise, or do they just wind up eventually being replaced, or does the company get sold for pennies on the dollar because there is just too much noise around?
Look, this is a classic case of when there's smoke, there's usually fire, right? Now, that being said, first of all, I don't think it's Ernst & Young anymore. I think they've officially changed their name to EY, right?
They are.
No, I think of Ernst & Young as the accounting and auditing side, and EY is the
services or whatever, sort of
services
like
side.
Accenture,
But maybe,
Anderson. Well, they don't do Anderson anymore. That's an old name from those union days, Arthur Anderson. But anyway, okay, Mr. Anderson. Anyway, but can they withstand that? It all depends on how big a stink is raised, quite frankly, right? How important is the NVIDIA business to their overall business? Will other vendors / suppliers follow NVIDIA's lead here and say, I'm going to back out of that, right? Or I'm going to slow down. Because, these things, to me, this is a classic case of when you call in your crisis management PR team and how do you combat this? And that will be the test of whether this management team survives, right? Do they put their head in their shell like a turtle and think that they're going to withstand the onslaught? Or do they bring in a crisis management team who responds to this in a positive way? They spin it that this was a political conflict or a personality conflict with the EY people, and there's a PwC or whoever the next big four company or Accenture coming in now taking EY's place, and they're going to issue a restatement and a new report within 4 months, 6 months. It's a crisis management situation.
It feels like a classic bank run, right? Everybody lacks confidence, and then
Well, that's what happens. It's a smoke when there's, people believe that when there's smoke, there's fire, and no one wants to get burnt. We shall see. We shall see. Anyway, I guess we'll take a break here. We're going to come back. Some big news in the technology training, specifically security training space. But Mike will tell us more about it. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
All right, folks, we're back. And yes, there's some big news in the certification space and training. CompTIA has been acquired by a venture capital firm. I think two of them all got together to pool some resources for this. I can't remember. I think it's Thoma Bravo is one of them. And
Thoma Bravo and HIG Capital.
HIG Capital. And I guess this makes some financial sense to somebody, but I scratch my head and I go, well, what is the core asset of CompTIA exactly? It's kind of an association with a bunch of people who get certifications and retraining, but is that a business that can be flipped? I mean, Alan, what's the motivation for a bunch of VC firms acquiring CompTIA?
So, Mike, I'm glad you came to me on this. It's an interesting thing. First of all, I'm not familiar with HIG Capital, let me say up front, but certainly Thoma Bravo is a favored choice within the cyber industry for scooping up technology vendors, tool vendors, right? Thoma Bravo's done a ton. I've had the chance to meet the Thoma Bravo people. And and they've done some amazing deals over the years and operated some amazing companies. They've taken public companies private and took them public again. They've sold, a lot of there's a handful of PE companies that specialize in cyber, and they often trade companies like I used to trade baseball cards. So Thoma Bravo is for real. CompTIA is for real too, but CompTIA is a different animal. I have a bit of experience in the training business, right? I co-founded the DevOps Institute, which we sold to PeopleCert, one of the leading providers of certifications in the world. PeopleCert, of course, controls ITIL from our ITSM space. CompTIA is different. CompTIA was a not-for-profit. What does CompTIA stand for? Anybody know? Computer Technology Information Association or something like that. I believe that's what it stands for. It was, first and foremost, an association. It was a not-for-profit association. And the people who, got together. Now, the PEs did not buy the association. The association, which is continued, as far as I know, to be a not-for-profit, will continue independent of the CompTIA testing and certification business. I don't know if it can continue independent of the testing and certification business, because what the heck is that association doing beyond testing and certification? Now, my sources tell me that, CompTIA probably did somewhere in the, believe it or not, the area of around $600 million in testing and certification yearly. They're big in the federal government space. That's like a CompTIA degree, a CompTIA cert is a prereq for a lot of government jobs, especially in cyber. Obviously, out of that 600, they were profitable from what I understand, right? EBITDA, profitable. And that's the language of PEs. The risk for me here is, what is that association and that not-for-profit sort of be-gooder? How does that survive in the market world of a PE running this thing to maximize its profits? Like in the security space, who's CompTIA's biggest competitors? Mitch, you and I both know this, right? It's probably SANS, the SANS Institute,
Absolutely.
and then ISC Squared, people behind the CISSP exam. Both not-for-profits. Both not-for-profits.
And I would argue those two are even higher, more highly respected. Not that CompTIA wasn't.
Yeah, no, well, CompTIA.
Those are kind of the gold standards.
Yeah, SANS and they were. You're right, Mitchell, they are. CompTIA was, I think, more of a broader, they had a lot of different tests.
Yeah, CompTIA had like that A++ certification, which is almost like your entry-level certification, right?
Right.
But I am taking right now, actually, which is what I found was so interesting about this segment. I'm literally taking the CompTIA A+ course right now.
Yeah.
Good for you. I know where I'll send my PC problems.
Good for you, Amanda, though. But I know you, Amanda, you take a lot of certifications, and that's great.
I do. That's my hobby. I took a lot of the DevOps Institute certifications.
I know you did. You know what? Once we all go unionize, this is going to help you too.
The other thing that CompTIA does that doesn't get as much visibility, but they do a boatload of work in this space, is they're all over Washington and probably one of the premier lobbying organizations in Washington for IT issues. Certainly have a lot of years of representatives and senators and have been doing it for decades. I'm assuming that part stays
with the association.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe like if you were CompTIA, Alan, or you were CompTIA, Mike, you or Amanda, if you would be sitting there saying, man, there's so many things I want to do, but I got to keep running these dang certification courses and training and all this stuff.
Those are the golden eggs. I couldn't do anything without the money that those certs are giving me.
Oh, maybe. I just got a whole bunch of money now.
Well, now they
Somebody
do. Yeah,
bought.
It's going to be
now
interesting.
Now I got a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
And most of those are automated. I mean, these are automated certifications. That's just,
well,
after income coming
in. They're going to keep the name, right? They're going to be paying with some kind of licensing or what have you for using the CompTIA name. So there's still going to be a revenue stream. There's going to be no management anymore for me. I can spend all my time at Washington, D.C. having champagne cocktails with fancy senators and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. I just...
Wait. I have this radical idea. Maybe CompTIA becomes a union.
That brings it full circle, Mike.
Well, that's it. Can I take Mike's place when he quits to go form the CompTIA union, Alan?
Yeah. Fist.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
Sure.
No, but here's my thing. Knowing what I know now about the certification and testing business from, founding and running the DevOps Institute for 7 years, I don't know if a PE is going to be really happy with the EBITDA there with, how big can they grow it? How much can they squeeze out to the bottom line? This isn't your 10x return that most, these people want. It is a bit of a cash cow. It was, not for profit or not, people still made a lot of money on CompTIA there. It threw off some money. But when you're running it as a not-for-profit and it throws off, let's say, I don't know, 50, 60 million bucks on $600 million in revenue, you may say, that's only 10% EBITDA, not great. But, if you're on the board of the not-for-profit, you're getting a fat $1 million paycheck. That's damn good. And there's enough for 60 of those to go around. That's good at that level. It ain't so good if you're Tom or Braba, who are used to dealing in, how do I squeeze more EBITDA? Yeah, how do I get to 22%? And we could automate the test, but without the association really pushing those tests, now it's a for profit and they're going against SANS. Does it lose any of its luster, of what luster it had? And so I think this is going to be an interesting play. And let's see how HIG and Tama make out with it. We'll tell by how quick they dump it. Right? Do they find a seller, spin it, what?
I think it creates a big opportunity for competitors. And I think part of the thing with CompTIA is that the certification that they provided was always on some HR list somewhere that said, check the box and you got to have that. Well, a lot of HR departments might revisit that thinking post this acquisition and go, what is going on here with this thing? Right?
I agree. I think this is a great opportunity to jump in there. But again, having been in this business, it's not easy getting on those HR lists. It's a lot of work. I mean, that's one thing my friends at PeopleCert have done really well, right? ITIL is, a prereq for so many jobs still out there today. Millions of people ITIL certified. We run skill up events every other month for ITIL with our friends at PeopleCert. And they're some of our best attended events. So it's easier said than done. And that, that's the barrier to entry here that I think Thoma Bravo and HIG are buying into. That's that CompTIA is already on those lists. It'll be interesting. This is very different than a SaaS or software-based business that Thoma Bravo usually buys, right?
I think the one part of that is similar is that a lot of IT professionals just routinely re-up that certification because they feel like they got to have it to get to the HR department. So they just kind of routinely take the test and send in the check. So
we'll see. We've seen this with ISC Squared too. A lot of people revolting, burning their CISSP certs. So
I don't know. Maybe AI will make it a lot easier to get certified too. I'll just have my AI bot take the test.
Maybe CompTIA should offer an AI certification.
I'm sure they're thinking.
You know what the association could offer up the AIs to take the test that the now private business offers.
They probably got that. That would be
as a union benefit.
As a union benefit. Look for the union label.
I do wonder. I do wonder if this is a little bit of like open source versus private, like
not for profit versus profit.
Yeah. I'm thinking like, what if somebody came and bought Wikipedia or something? Like the content, that is to say, or something like that. There's been this 30-year experiment, really going back much farther than that. But it's a roughly 30-year experiment in crowdsourcing open source, that sort of thing. I don't think, the CompTIA training and certification is quite the same thing, but it is the same kind of principle. You have three organizations, all three public, providing public services to the IT industry. Now you're going to have one going private. Is that going to make it better? It's going to make it worse? What's going to happen? It's an interesting natural experiment.
When things go private, they structurally change oftentimes, right? So what might happen with CompTIA is things going to be broken up, something goes somewhere else, and these are sold off. There's lots of possibility. It may not exist in the form we think of it today. So that's another whole track in and of itself. But private equity firms don't buy companies to leave them alone. They buy them to make them more profitable or make parts of it so that they can sell it and make money on it.
And they might flip the whole business to somebody else anyway before you know it.
We could see another transaction in 6 months, where...
but if you do, it'll be because they realize it's not profitable enough for them and they can't squeeze it.
Well, how much do they invest in making it profitable?
Well, that's the thing. We don't know what they paid. I'd love to see what the multiple here was. Was it based on EBITDA? Was it based on top line, a combination?
Yeah.
We may never know. It's private.
Yep.
But congratulations. My friend Scott Barlow is vice chairman of the board at CompTIA. You knew some other CompTIA folks. Congratulations to the CompTIA team. Really, this was a bold move, and let's see how it comes out. Yeah. Anybody else? if that's it, then let's call it a wrap on this version of Techstrong, gang. As usual, we have a full day of Techstrong TV following this, including, I believe, a Tech Field Day from the Tech Field Day, Steve Foskett's team. I think it's on networking, Mitchell. Do you know? Yeah.
Networking.
Tech Field Day networking on Techstrong TV today. Check that out. Until tomorrow, though, on behalf of Guy and Mitchell and Amanda and Mike and myself, thanks for watching Techstrong, gang, everyone.